Finance Committee, City of Las Vegas, September 9th, 2024. 2 p.m. on Monday. Roll call, please.
Alan Franken,
Here.
Anna Minus,
Present.
Robert Wieters,
Present.
Francino Martinez. Chairman Montoya.
Present.
Thank you, Chairman. We have a quorum.
Okay. Next item, pledge of allegiance. Diane, you want to lead us?
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let the record show that Francino Martinez leads.
Thank you. That she's late or?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Finance Director, do you have any guests or new employees that you want to introduce?
Yes, I do.
Okay. We'll do that first of all.
Chastity, if you'll stand up. This is Chastity Garcia. She is our new general accountant. And it's been with us
Welcome.
about a month, 3 weeks, a month. And it's gonna be one of the better members of our team.
Thank you and welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Does that make you full staff?
No, we're one short.
One short?
Well, two actually, yeah.
And what positions are those?
Inventory specialist and IT.
Oh, okay. Approval of the agenda. It's time for a motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the agenda as written.
Okay, may I have a second?
Second?
First and second, roll call please. Well, you know what? Oh, we'll just do a all in favor. Yeah, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing none. The next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of June the 17th, 2024.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? None? So moved. Do we have any public input?
No public input today.
Thank you. Next item is discussion items, letter A, August 2024 finance report. Mr. Madrid.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I have, it's August. There's usually not a lot to talk about. Everybody's got a fat budget. They haven't started spending all their money yet, but there's some things that you should notice. And then the first one I'm gonna point out is the trend in our gross receipts tax revenues. If you look at the very first page, you'll notice all the GRTs and property tax are above last year. And they continue to rise over the last few years. So it is a trend that's going up. I think that's something that we can expect to continue, maybe even higher with all of the FEMA money that's coming in. We've only started to see the beginning of that. So that's real encouraging for the general fund. On the expense side, you'll see some percentages that might look a little bit high. And there's one common factor throughout. And if you compare last year's year-to-date through August to this year's year-to-date through August, this August we had 3 pay periods. So we had an extra pay period. So across the board, that's going to make the expenditures higher than they were a year ago, same period. Because our last pay period was on the 31st, I think, of August. So it doesn't really affect anything that much, but it looks like there's a jump everywhere. The other one is in our general services budget. And that's because that's one of the few things that we prepay in advance. That's our general liability insurance. And that's to the state self-insurance fund. And we pay that for the whole year. And that's allocated among the general fund and all the departments also. So those two things create a minor anomaly and be spread out throughout the whole year.
Was there an increase
I'm sorry?
from last year to this year on
A
your?
big one, yeah. And that's been the trend.
Mhm.
I'm not sure what the trend in claims is, but that's normally what drives the increase in the liability insurance. And then COVID had a major effect too. That was the biggest jump.
Was the increased cost in the budget? Had you been aware of it prior to?
No,
First-
the premiums, we're made aware of the premiums after we submit the preliminary budget. Matter of fact, that's one of the BARs that we have on the agenda,
Okay.
is to compensate for that, to bring it up to the level that it needs to be.
I have a question, if I could. If you look at the FY 2025 budget column in both revenue and expense, and you subtract the two, you get a minus $7 million. So it looks like your budget for this new year has a deficit of $7 million. Where's that coming from?
Let me see.
If I did it right, the revenue
Bottom
side,
line, yeah,
the revenue side's 15 million, and the expense side is 22 plus million. And when I subtract those two, I get about 7.2 million deficit for the year.
part of that is the bottom line includes the transfers. Those are inter-fund internal, and that money does not go out. It stays within, but it affects that bottom line. It is an expenditure, but it doesn't go outside of the city.
So what is the carry forward from prior years to this fiscal year in the general fund? The numbers that I collected were around $9 million. Is that correct?
In what do you mean by carry forward?
That is a positive that you have in the general fund from prior years. And it is, in my belief, it is spendable in the future through deficit
That would be
budgets.
what was unspent in the prior year, but it's not all the resources available because we also have cash reserves and investments that are available also, in addition to the unspent prior year money.
Right there in the top corner.
So,
1 million,
how much?
1 million.
8.96? Okay. 8, 9, 6, 0, 3, 9. What's the last number?
8960.39.
Eight, nine.
Let me show you 24, I'm sorry.
Should it not be a balanced budget? Is that what you're getting at, Mr. Witters?
No, I'm okay with the deficit spending, but only if there's enough money from prior years to fund it, and it looks like there is.
The number the real number that you would be looking for, is on our budget summary sheet, where we have the ending cash balances from prior year, which are the beginning.
Yep.
Plus the, investments,
Uh-huh.
plus all the collections and everything else. That number is the one, it's gotta be positive at the end. But the number that you're looking at here is just the cash, which is more than enough.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Only the cash.
But I just want to also be sure that that's what you're planning.
Oh, yeah.
You're planning a general fund budget for the current year that we're 2 months into that has a deficit spending of $7 million.
Not necessarily deficit spending, but we do have obligations that were in place at the end of the year that were not paid that were not spent that had to be carried over to this year, which have to be paid in the current year.
Yeah. Okay. Just as long as the councilors
and you
are
know,
okay
the
the
state of New Mexico has a really nice way of handling that, because what they do is they separate prior year encumbrances from current year
Yeah.
encumbrances.
Yeah.
We don't do that.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, so, going to the enterprise funds, you'll see in the water fund, in column E, our actual year-to-date expenditures, 5.2 million, compared to last year of 671,000. That is where all of our emergency expenditures were charged, because we hadn't set up the fund yet. So, about 4.5 million of those expenditures are gonna be moved out of there into a fund that, Dominic set up, and it is on the second to last page.
Right.
We'll have separate FEMA reporting for this. So those expenditures will be moved into this fund during the next month, and they'll be reported separately.
Is the budgeted amount that's so high gonna also move to that fund?
Yes,
Yeah.
there's a budget adjustment in our packet for the 140 million that's approved to be paid to the city from FEMA. That'll be moved out of the enterprise fund and have its own separate fund.
And a lot of this stuff, though, that's in the water budget right now gets moved as well.
Yes,
Like these emergency monies, is that where they are?
yes,
Yeah. Okay.
all the water that was brought in on trucks, the bottled water, the tankers,
Yeah.
all of that, the emergency work on the wells and the pumps, that was all in there. So that's gonna be moved out.
And when are we going to see that reduction from the water fund of 640?
By the next report.
Next time around? Okay. I have another question. If you look at the budgeted amounts it's almost 20 million revenue in, and it's 38 million expenses out, that's a minus 18 million deficit spending. You're saying most of that, if not all of that, will be corrected when you...
No, not all of that, and I'm not sure about most of that. What we show here is we accumulate funds and set aside money for projects, system improvement, system maintenance, that all runs through here. And it's not current year revenue, it's been collected over a period of time, but it'll get spent from here. Am I right?
Yes, but $15 million is part of that FEMA money that we moved out. 15 million even.
So there's an 18 million deficit on the report you gave us. 15 million of that is going to go away with the new FEMA money that's arriving, right? Okay. And what is the surplus, prior year surplus monies in the enterprise fund from prior years? My scratching around shows it around 27 million. Am I close?
I'd have to do some math to get everybody in there. I'd have to do some math to pull it all together.
So we don't have to take time now for that, but if maybe you could get me that number, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. And it should be the number on the budget summary.
Well, I got my number off a prior year audit reports.
And by our next meeting, we should have our final budget approved, and we'll represent that budget summary.
Okay,
That way,
okay.
we'll have a real clear handle of what the cash balances were and what they're projected to be.
Okay.
Then, in the recreation department, we have some, numbers that look way out of line, some good, some bad. The wellness center shows a drop in revenues. I don't have an answer for that. The open swim is due to the pool being closed for a while. The main one is the general fund transfers. These transfers happen every month. It's the 12th every month for the whole year based on what was budgeted. So last year you saw 70,000, this year you're seeing 391,000. Well, that's because we added 1.5 million to that budget to replace the roof. So every month, that transfer to the recreation fund is higher for that amount. So it'll be that amount every month this year. That is to replace the roof.
Will you start to reflect the expenses down below for the roof replacement, or?
Yes,
Yeah.
And where did the 1.5 come from?
it was, it all comes from the general fund.
And that was just on manager's request and approval.
That was approved by the council in the budget, as part of the operating budget.
Okay, but it never came to us on a separate line item,
No, no, it was presented in
you know.
the interim and final budget.
Yeah.
Never came to this committee though,
Yeah,
so, no, you wouldn't have seen it.
yeah.
Do
Well,
we-
and you see, that's what I'm getting at is that, you know, I think that those kind of expenses need to come before the finance committee.
Absolutely. None of the budget came to the finance committee.
Yeah, no, I know. And then the other point I wanted to point out was on this new FEMA line item fund. The reason that we're deciding to do that is because we need to keep it separate because it's federal money and they'll be audited that in the future separately. So this way, and then most of that money is, that 98 million for sure is just dedicated for the plant itself and water projects, no. You can't use it on roads or streets or, you know,
And-
any
and-
other funding like that.
Mr. Counselor, is it an allocation or is it actual cash in your bank?
It's actual cash in the bank that has not gone here
It's
yet.
gonna be, yeah,
Yeah,
soon.
so,
So you have more than 2 eyes, you have 4 eyes, 6 eyes, making sure that none of that is being used for anything else but that.
Yep,
yes, and then, are you gonna be talking about that one down the road, on this one?
yeah, in the
Okay.
investment
I'll-
policy, in that discussion, yeah.
I'll leave the rest, okay.
One more question on that. Who is responsible for the recreation center, the recreation department's budget? Who at the city is responsible for this budget?
The director, Mr. Crispin.
No.
No.
Arturo Padilla.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Who?
Arturo Padilla. He's the director.
He's the director.
Recreation.
He's the,
Recreation director.
Parks and Recs. Okay, all right. So he's responsible for this budget that we see called Recreation Department, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Madrid.
Okay. One thing that I just want to mention, there's not a lot of things to talk about in lodger's tax or the cannabis, but in the next couple of weeks, in opioid, we are going to be taking some action to transfer some excess cash balances. And these are gonna be some of the candidates, because there's, a lot of this cash is available, it has no plans for it. So this is gonna be part of the program of cash that we'll be moving to the state treasurer's office. So when we present the cash report, we haven't determined what that format's gonna look like. So if you have any input, let me have it. because we'll be presenting budget, cash, investments, and the FEMA activity all separately. The one for FEMA, we've got a pretty good idea how to show. But cash and investments, if there's a preference, if there's anything that you want to see, let me know. We're
I
probably
have-
gonna start off with a broad picture and then pare it down.
Sure.
I have one input to you.
Okay.
Do it yesterday.
You know,
One of my favorite
The
things.
city of Las Vegas has already contacted the treasurer's office and they've gotten everything set up already to where upon receiving that funding and upon approval from mayor and council, you'll go directly to there and start the first day one, and you'll be available to us within 24 hours if we
Right.
need it.
Right?
And that kind of money will bring in an estimate of between $400,000 and $500,000 interest per month to the city of Las Vegas.
Per month.
Yeah,
Cool.
If it
and
all stays there for a while, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
so,
Now,
but again, this for water projects, we are in the process of doing the water plant, plan and design and so forth. So, some of that money, we'll start using it as we go along.
Understand.
Yeah.
now, in regard to that, as soon as we got approval from the council to participate in this program, which is required by the state treasurer's office,
Right?
we start the bureaucratic work of getting all the authorizations in place from the bank, from the state treasurer's office, from the city, and that's the first part. We finally finished that last week because some of our local banks don't have the exact authorization tools in the form of a seal that we need. We had to find alternative authorization. The next part is we have to go through the training with the state auditor's office, the state treasurer's office. To participate in the program, you have to know how to navigate the system. The city hasn't done this in a long time, so it's gonna be a brand new thing. Not only that, we have to understand what the way that their system operates. Because we'll talk about our policy in a little while, but they have their own policy and procedures for investing this money. They invest billions, not millions. And they have very, very tight parameters that they have to work with. So they have to be a lot better at it. They have to be efficient, especially in this overnight program. One small portion of it is investing in repurchase agreements. You guys know what those are?
Yeah.
I remember them from 1980 when I had investments with Dr. Wald, but I had to reread up on them. And they're not complicated, but it's something the everyday person, the everyday government finance person does not deal with. These are usually professional investment brokers that do this. The state treasurer has them on staff. They know what they're doing. But I just wanted to show you a few of the reasons why it wasn't done yesterday. And it's progressing. So, and I think Dinah will agree with me when I say, and Francina, you can do it fast or you can do it right in government. We're gonna do it right.
And this is breaking new ground for the city of Las Vegas.
Yeah.
I don't know when was the last time or if they ever did invest on the state fund or not, but to clarify a point about the interest that we would be receiving, that funding can be used for other projects.
Yep.
Or city hall or roads and
Yep.
stuff like that, the interest, but not the actual money that we
No.
get from the federal
No.
government. So just to clarify that. Go ahead, Mr. Madrid.
That's all I had on the financial report itself, unless there's any questions.
Mr. Chairman, I have a few questions.
Go ahead, Mr. Flores.
On the lodger's tax, the budgets that are set up look like it's set up to do 425,000 deficit spending this year. And I understand there's a fair amount of surplus in the lodger's tax. How much is that surplus from prior years that's available to spend this deficit?
It's at least 700,000 that I can remember off the top of my head. And it may be higher than that. Lodger's tax has a special rule that was suspended by the governor during COVID, in that it requires that anything that's not spent within 2 years gets reverted back to the state.
Right, and I'm a little worried because I show the number I came up with was $1.5 million in that fund.
Yeah,
That could be, is that correct? Okay.
yeah.
So who's in charge of spending that?
That's really a collaborative effort between our Community Development Department and the Lodgers Tax Board.
Yeah. And they're aware
Oh, yeah.
that they have 1.5 million plus the current budget to spend this year?
As a matter of fact, they want to spend a lot of it in different ways, and we have to tell them no, because Lodgers tax is very restrictive.
Yeah, I understand that,
So
that,
we're aware of it, and they're
Okay.
working on it.
okay. And I know they have to bring all that to the council, for the council to approve. Okay, I had a question on, the cannabis. What's the prior year surplus in that? I show it as 240,000 because we've never spent any cannabis money that I'm aware of. So that's what, 2 years worth of cannabis? Does that sound about right, 240,000?
Sorry, my timer is not working today.
Okay,
It's at least that.
who's in charge of that? Is there anybody at the city level that's in charge of coming up with ideas to spend
Not
on?
at the department head level. That hasn't been assigned yet.
Okay. All right. The opioid,
Same thing.
how much money's there from prior years? That's up to 2 million or something like that?
1.1 million.
How much?
I'm showing 1.1 million.
1.1 in the opioid from prior years, right? Okay. And is there anybody in the city that's in charge of coming up with ideas to spend that?
Not at the department head level that I'm aware of. It'd be a city manager.
Okay. All right.
I mean, just a suggestion to reach out to maybe the schools, maybe Luna, Highlands, maybe West, East. What programs are they implementing at that level?
Maybe they could use some, maybe where they can take the kids, students on trainings, they have.
I can't think of the names of the programs that they had back when I was working, but sometimes they take them to UNM for, at the moment, I can't think of the name, but there is programs at those levels if no one here wants to. Or, I'm not saying they don't want to, but just can't get to it. Okay, instead of just sitting here, having a meeting with, the top officials. And that way it's just not sitting here. It's
We have
being
the
put
need.
to use. It's being put to use.
Okay.
With a clarification on that spending, I'm not quite sure, this just came in, both those accounts came in 2 years ago, right? For the first time,
I don't know.
Probably.
About
2 years ago.
maybe
yeah.
3 years ago for cannabis, 2
Yeah.
years ago for
And then
opioid.
last year, we spent, I think we allocated 40,000 for the fire department and 40,000 for the police department, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And that was, I think the PD had already spent like 18,000. But I don't know if it was opioid or if it was cannabis. I don't remember which account. I think it was opioid.
I think you're right,
Yeah. So, I mean, we have spent some of it, but we should be spending a lot more of it on both accounts.
Now, if there's any way you can give the city manager a recommendation, I would request that you ask him to assign somebody
Right.
in the city to start coming up with ideas for opioid and for cannabis. Because it appears that money keeps coming in and there's very little spent because nobody's presenting ideas to the council as for their approval or disapproval to spend those funds on. And if I bump into Tim, I'll say the same thing to him, that I recommend he get somebody assigned to that.
If I'm not mistaken, Mr. Witters, the police department and the fire department were tasked with.
With both those funds? Okay.
They have started, but like.
Yeah. Muy poco, yeah. Okay.
Well, we allocated those 80,000 for them, 40,000 each, and they're responsible for that. But the rest of it, it's basically up to mayor council how they wanna spend it, on both accounts. But it would be nice to have recommendations from staff and council and, even other organizations as to how we can spend that much money. It is a lot.
Mr. Counselor, and did they spend the 40, both of them?
Not yet.
At-
No, I think the
when
fire,
they allocated that amount to
the police
them?
department, I think, spent 18,000 off the bat, and I think they spent another 4,000 or 5,000. And I don't know about the fire department, I don't think they've touched it, I don't know.
And I don't know how other cities spend it. Does anybody have
No,
any idea?
But that would be one of my recommendations, that whoever the city manager assigns, one of the first thing that person does is pick up the phone and call cities that are a little bigger than Las Vegas, not our size, a little bigger, and talk to the people at those
Yep.
places. They have cannabis money coming in, they have opioid money coming in, and just get some ideas from them. Find out where those cities are spending some of their money. And, that helps prime the pump of ideas that can be brought to the council.
I think the opioid money goes towards training
Right,
and.
professional development.
Yeah, but the other one, cannabis, I think that's more lenient, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, you're right, get somebody assigned to it and find out exactly how they can be spent and move forward that. And I'll recommend that, the city manager tomorrow that I meet with him too.
Okay. And Morris, I'd like to thank you for putting this page on here for opioid and the page on for the FEMA funding that came in, because those are becoming big chunks of dough. that
On behalf of
somebody
Mr.
needs to
Chavez,
track.
I'll accept the thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dominic.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Major.
Okay. Discussion on investments. We don't need to spend.
We skip one, Morris.
What was the other? one? Oh, the budget.
Your favorite bar, sir.
Oh, boy. That's the 30 or 40 or 50 pages. Budget adjustments.
131, I believe.
31, yeah.
I wasn't gonna go through all of them and name them. They are, except for two of them, they are to accept and appropriate funding that's been given to the city in one form or another. There's one that is to, we talked a little bit about earlier, to increase the amount of money appropriated to pay our insurance premiums, general liability, because we got the notice of premium after we set up the budget. This is to bring it to the level that we need to pay that. And we also have an additional 750,000 for the flood event that came from the governor's office by executive order. And I think all the other ones are to appropriate either new funding or carryover funding.
Right.
if there's any questions on the individual ones, I would, would say this at the council meeting, I would dare anybody to vote no.
So, if we could go, I think it's the third page of this where it's the next, there we go, that page. So, a couple of questions. The column called asset cash, there's $14,418 down about halfway down the page for that special legislative appropriation. What is that? Is that the city share of some project?
That's cash that's already in place. If you take that plus the anticipated revenue.
Right.
you Come up with the expenditures.
It equals the expenditures, yeah. Okay, so that might be cash that was received prior year?
Yes.
Okay. And then the last question I have is at the very bottom. It's the insurance and bonds. Am I reading that right? The city is paying almost $1 million in insurance premiums?
No, the city's paying $2 million in insurance premiums. We under budgeted by $1 million.
Oh.
This is just to increase to the appropriate level.
So you budgeted for half of this amount,
Yes.
and then after the preliminary budget was done, you found out the actual amounts. Why did insurance go up?
Well, there's
Is it,
a lot of different reasons. There's mainly tort claims, there's injuries, there's accidents. There's a lot of things that affect the rating.
yeah,
For example, if we had a bad shooting in the police department, that would affect the premiums for like 7 years. So,
Workman's comp.
yeah, workman's comp is another one.
Do you have a safety officer?
Yes, we do. Another one is the hailstorm. You know, they'll pay the claims and then increase the premiums. We've had probably everything possible in the last couple of years.
Of course.
Sure.
COVID is a big one too. Well, during COVID, they guaranteed that no municipality would see an increase in the premiums. They lived up to that promise, and after COVID, it shot up double.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, the actual invoice came in at 2,053,000 and change.
wow. And you had budgeted 1 million, approximately.
Good double.
so, thank goodness we had the reserves.
Okay.
Mr. Madrid, let me step back and just ask for a motion to approve the August 2024 finance report. So, since,
So moved.
do I have a second for that?
Second. Go ahead.
Second, Ms. Francine? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, none. So, go ahead with your resolution on 24-25. Go ahead.
Okay, and that's the one where, I didn't want to go through all of them, but I'll read the body of the resolution, 24-25, a resolution to make budget adjustments for the 2024-2025 fiscal year. Whereas the governing body of the city of Las Vegas has developed a budget adjustment request for the fiscal year 24-25. Whereas said budget was developed on basis of increase in revenue, expenditure, and transfers in and out through cooperation with all unit departments, elected officials, and other department supervisors. Whereas the city of Las Vegas is in need of making a budget adjustment from the 2024-25 fiscal year budget to include, and they're all listed. And this is what's to be presented to the governing body on Wednesday. And we request your approval and recommendation to the council to approve this resolution.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir. Good.
I move that we approve.
Okay, so there's no questions on
Approval.
any of them? Question? No? Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Franklin, second. All those in favor, signify by saying that. Well, it's resolution, roll call, please.
Francina Martinez.
Yes.
Alan Franken.
4?
Robert Witters.
Yes.
Dana Minus.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Motion passed. Next item.
Well, I get to give you homework today.
Oh, no.
What you have clipped together here is the old investment policy that you've seen before, and some progress that I've made on revising it. Now, I'll go through two things. The things that I have removed or added, and the things that I'm gonna need some direction from you all on. Because your recommendation is gonna be key to taking this to the governing body when it's ready. Now, when you have time, I would take them and just put them next to each other. Please ignore the glitches and anomalies that you see in the formatting. Every word that has the letter I is bumped up against the next letter. I don't know why, but we'll fix that. So ignore that part of it. Tolerate it, please, just in the interim till we have a final document. A few things that I have removed is under the old policy, there were references to savings and loan associations throughout the document. I took them out completely. The Federal Savings and Loan Insurance Corporation was dissolved in 2007, meaning they're not insured. We will not do business with them. There's not many that exist anyway. Those references are gone. In the old policy, investments were allowed for up to a 5-year period. I shortened that to 1 year because most of all of the investments that I know of that the city would make are a lot more flexible and elastic than that. If we had a 5-year CD versus a 1-year CD, we would just roll over the 1-year CD 4 times if we wanted to keep it there 5 years, not commit to 5 years today, because that type of economic picture is really, really hard to paint if you don't have the right professionals to do it. So that's a change.
I would hate to commit your new governing body to something that they may not would not have voted for, you know,
Right.
as they change, as administrations change and council makeup changes, so I think that's,
Yeah, and you can extend it administratively if you want to, but it's not commitment. And then,
and I'm not sure you'd want to make a hard and fast rule on it. Allow some flexibility. If you had a 2% CD, a 2-year CD that paid, say, a half a point or a point more than a 1 year, that might be something the governing body might say, you know, yeah, or, you know, a significant increase.
right,
And 2 years is probably not gonna cause a lot of problems, you know.
yeah, and you know, those are the kind of things that can come to this committee and to the governing body fairly quickly anyway. Some of the detailed language you'll see is a reference to local banks. Some of the language was unclear in there. I cleaned it up to show that local banks are banks that have their headquarter office here in Las Vegas, not in New York City. So those are things for consideration. And let me emphasize that anything in this policy, you can recommend anything in it. There's nothing hard and fast in here. The only thing that is set is whatever is in state statute. Everything else we can consider. The main thing that is nowhere in here that I'm gonna need your direction and guidance and opinions on is because the city has never had this much cash. We will be sending a lot of it, the majority of it, to the state treasurer's office because their earnings are higher. It's that simple. The variable that we haven't had to deal with is, and in another 6 months, we may only have one local bank left. So, how do we balance the investments in the local government investment pool versus local banks? And there's things that we have to require from local banks to invest in them. They have to have a clean audit. They have to have the collateral policies that line up with ours. Those are very basic things. Do we, if we're going to invest more significant amounts of money in local banks, do we want to negotiate those so that we can get commitments that that money will be lent locally to businesses to make it an economic engine? Do we want to consider things like that? We can. Within the law, we can. Do we want to make that part of our investment policy or not? Do we want to maximize earnings? What's the recommendation? What's the priority? It's not my duty to make those decisions, but it is my duty to present all the options to you all so that you know the whole menu before you pick the item. And let's have that discussion. By next month, I'll have a final draft of what I think this policy should look like. And the next meeting will probably be a pretty long one, because what I'd like to do next meeting is actually do the final edits that this committee would want. And come up with a final recommendation for the governing body. It's not gonna hold up our investments. I will tell you the discussion I've had with, that Dominic and I have had with the city manager is the 98 million that you've been reading about. Because it's a burden on a local bank, let me tell you, I didn't know that it would be, but it's a significant amount. The minute that it gets here, we're gonna move it out. And we're gonna send it
You're gonna
to
send
the
it to the
treasurer's
state
office.
finance authority?
Yes,
If I may.
yeah.
Even with the $15 million that we did receive,
Already, that was significant for the local banks. So what we did is we spread it across 60 banks, $200,000 a piece. And ICS is that what's called?
ICS, yeah.
Like 2.5%. But for us to just hold it in one location, it's not FDIC insured. So that's what we did in order to make sure it was 100% insured.
Through how many banks?
60.
60? 60?
You get 250,000 per bank.
Yeah,
And
that's like, you know what?
But the city doesn't, Mr. Councilman, the city doesn't have to monitor that. It goes to, I think the Southwest Capital prepared that. There's several different funds out there. It's widely practiced in order to get insurance coverage on these very large accounts, that they have a mechanism to put that money out in insured accounts in a great number of banks.
I understand that, Mr. Franklin, but a 2% interest rate, I mean, we gotta get our money's worth.
Well, I don't know where that rate came from.
Yeah.
That was Southwest Capital.
Well, that's
But,
what I'm getting at,
It was zero before.
yeah.
Right.
And so I think they did a good job getting at least that initial money under an investment that's getting 2.5%. And Those are short-term, I think those were short-term CDs.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, they are, and if you read the first part of any policy in any municipality, this one is a good one. It says, the purpose of the policy is to set specific investment policies, strategy guidelines for the city of Las Vegas in order to achieve the goals of, first one is safety, then liquidity, then yield, then diversification. The goal was to make sure that every dollar was insured by the federal government.
Yeah, and to me, the whole amount, this bank could have not done it. 'Cause they're
They
not-
didn't?
No, they
could-
didn't, but they couldn't have done it either way.
No,
Exactly.
there's
So-
no bank that can.
Yeah, and that's why we wanna push towards doing to the state pool and invest as much as we can up there for twice the amount of interest,
Right.
you know. And then the other thing is, just for point of clarification, you know, credit unions are not banks. So we can't put our monies in credit unions, and I know one of them, Southwest, is selling out to credit union, I guess, or one of the credit unions, so that's not gonna be an option anymore. Like Mr. Madrid said, in 6 months, I think they'll probably be gone. But I don't know, as far as I'm concerned, I think that, I've been pushing so that we get the highest interest earnings that we can possibly get for the city of Las Vegas. So that, and I don't care where it goes, I mean, it's just that I want the highest so that we can do other projects. We have a lot of needs, and we still got a long ways to go. And if we can afford to get $500,000 a month on interest rates, well, heck, let's do that. That's what I recommend.
I would agree with you, sir. And I do believe safety is important. And that needs to be considered. But I think there are safe routes, safe investments, and in particular, the state finance authority's investment plan, municipal investment plan. That is safe. It meets liquidity requirements. Would you agree, Morris? Yeah,
We could have our
get it
money
overnight,
2
right?
days.
Yeah. And I believe that they're pretty good at diversifying all the investments that come in from all the municipalities, et cetera, within the state. And so as quick and as soon and as much as we can get to there, I would really love to see that, because they're going to start seeing some pretty big interest payments that then the city can spend on other projects, because it needs a ton of work. May I ask you a couple other quick questions about what you've written so far and some of your thoughts on it? I'm assuming this investment policy is in line with it supporting us investing in the state fund.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so there's nothing here that you've put in so far that would preclude that.
Oh, no, and the language was already in there. I've changed a little bit of the language to explain what allowable investments are for a municipality. For example, just like the state treasurer, and I worked in the state treasurer's office, so I know they're very good at what they do. They invest in treasury bills, government bonds, local bonds, repurchase agreements, everything that is pretty secure unless the whole stock market crashes, and then all bets are off anyway. But they do not invest in stocks. They do invest in some bonds. Everything with a government secure stamp on it, they invest in. Their short-term investments are 6 months, not overnight. But they invest billions. Once this FEMA money comes in and we send it over there, we're gonna be their biggest shareholder in that fund.
Really?
Yes,
Cool.
so,
So can we negotiate with them on interest rates?
I don't think so.
Come on, let's give it a shot. Okay, next
So,
question.
Mr. Madrid, just to clarify, so, several years ago, when we did have the real estate bust, the state of New Mexico did lose money.
Yes,
So I'm guessing if the state of New Mexico's funds weren't 100% guaranteed, this is not 100% guaranteed funds that
They're
we're.
not guaranteed or insured.
Yeah, okay.
They are speculative in nature.
One other quick detail question. How does this, as written so far, policy square with the interest rate curve? As you know, for the last 2 years, the interest rate curve has been inverted. That means that short-term investments got more interest, long-term investments got less interest, which is the wrong way normally for it to happen. It's reinverting, so it's going back to normal right now. Is there anything, especially in that 1 year max term of investment, that's going to screw things up from our standpoint?
No, and really, the whole policy kind of allows for any trend because of the liquidity that we're gonna have. So if we see things coming or changing in a negative way, then we can adjust what our investments are.
Okay, good.
So that's really the whole idea, is we're being very non-committal and very greedy.
Oh, good, okay. So our homework is to give you any inputs.
Yes.
Okay, it's a deal.
And if it's a capital letter, let me have it. Anything you have. And anything that's not there, don't just give me input on what's there. If there's something that you think that should be incorporated. What I did was I reviewed the investment policies from Santa Fe, Houston, and Aurora, Colorado. So I tried to get a kind of a spectrum,
Excellent.
and that's where my initial assessment came from.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Madrid, I guess this investment policy hadn't been in place since back in 2009?
It's been in place, it's just never been used.
Okay. And just to note that, I guess, the state's local government investment pool, in the past 2 years, I think they've increased their investments in New Mexico by, it's a very high percentage, but I don't know what the percentage is. I don't wanna,
I think it's close to 20%,
20%?
because a lot of local governments had extra COVID money.
Yeah.
So their fund balances, their reserves have gone up.
Yeah, and I think the state of New Mexico is investing close to $100 billion
Overall, yes,
overall.
not in this program,
Yeah.
but overall, yeah.
Yeah, about $400 billion. So we're just a drop in the bucket, really, for
Yes,
them.
yeah.
That they manage. But, so, I don't know, Mr. Madrid, did you want a recommendation from us on going forward with this investment plan?
Nope,
No?
no, just
Okay.
your review and
Okay,
your advice.
all right.
And there'll be an item on every agenda until we get it done.
Well, I suggest, if you have any comments or anything like that, let Mr. Madrid know. And we'll go forward from there. Any other questions? No? Okay. Letter D, August 2024 AP checklist report.
Questions?
No,
No, none, really?
Oh, come on.
Mr. Franken?
if I have any questions, I'll ask you, Anthony, okay? Is that a deal? Thank you.
And that's always my question the day of the meeting. Did Bob call you, Anthony?
Well, in the past I have, but I got a little behind the power curve this week, so.
Oh, okay.
But I plan to review it in the next day or two. If I have any questions, I'll email you on that.
I'll be reviewing it next day or two, and I'll ask my questions at the council meeting. Because I haven't gotten time to go over it. But I know I have a couple of them. But I gotta check into this first one. And some spending, yeah. No question? Okay. Mr. Madrid, do you have anything else for us?
No, I think, that's everything that's been going on.
Okay. Mr. Chavez?
No, sir.
No? Okay. Well, thank you very much for this report. If there's no other comments or questions,
I move we adjourn, sir.
do I have a second?
Second.
First and second, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The next meeting is scheduled for October the 14th at 2 p.m., same place. Thank you, Mr. Madrid, and thank you, staff.
Thank you.